Sometimes being alone feels like a punishment, like the silence around you is louder than any noise, like everyone else has somewhere to be and you are the only one left standing still. But what if I told you that your solitude is not a curse, but a calling? That the emptiness you feel is not abandonment, but preparation? Sometimes Allah removes you from the crowd so you can finally hear the voice that truly matters. He takes away the noise so He can teach you peace. He closes doors not to confine you, but to redirect you to something greater, something sacred. So if you find yourself alone today, don't rush to fill that space with people or distractions. Sit with it, feel it, because in that loneliness, there is a secret, a divine lesson meant only for you. That's why you are alone. Sometimes solitude is not a punishment, but a sacred pause. It is not the absence of people, but the presence of clarity. You see, being alone is one of the most misunderstood seasons of life. Many rush to fill it with noise, with validation, with company that was never meant to sit at the table of your destiny. But when God pulls you away, He is not abandoning you, He is preparing you. Alone is where He reveals what the crowd distracted you from. Alone is where He teaches you the language of the soul, where you finally hear the whispers you've been too busy to notice. Sometimes you are alone because God wants you to unlearn attachment, to see how much of your worth was tied to being seen, to being chosen, to being loved by others who never even knew your depth. He wants you to understand that your peace cannot depend on their presence. Your purpose cannot depend on their approval. You may not see it now, but there are places He is taking you that others cannot walk. There are elevations that require separation. There are breakthroughs that can only be birthed in silence. The same way a seed must disappear underground before it grows, you too must go through a season of unseen growth. You are not forgotten. You are being cultivated. There is pruning happening. God is removing branches that no longer bear fruit, cutting ties that weigh your spirit down. And yes, it hurts. The silence, the loneliness, the unanswered calls, the empty seats, they feel like rejection, but often what you call rejection is redirection. You may not realize it yet. But He's protecting you from conversations that would corrupt your peace, from relationships that would drain your strength, from opportunities that look good but lead nowhere. He isolates to elevate. He takes you through wildernesses to teach you how to rely only on Him. And when you finally stop fighting solitude and start embracing it, something shifts. You begin to hear your own voice again. You start recognizing what your heart truly wants, not what the world tells you to chase. Alone becomes sacred. Alone becomes healing. Alone becomes the soil where your roots grow deep. You start realizing that the reason you were surrounded yet empty was because you were giving your energy to people who could never reciprocate it. You start realizing that peace is not found in having many people, but in having the right people. And sometimes that's just you and God. There's beauty in this stillness, in this in-between space where everything feels uncertain, but also full of potential. Because this is where transformation begins. It's where He removes the masks you wore to be loved. It's where He teaches you to stop begging for attention and start embodying purpose. It's where you stop chasing validation and start walking in divine confidence. So if you're wondering why you're alone, maybe it's because He loves you too much to let you stay distracted. Maybe He's showing you that solitude is not a curse, but a calling. Maybe He's reminding you that before you can love someone rightly, you must learn to sit with yourself completely. You are not being punished. You are being prepared. Every silence is shaping you. Every distance is defining you. Every lonely night is teaching you how to rely on the only presence that never leaves. You are alone because you are being realigned. Healing requires isolation before restoration. You see, there's a sacred process in the way life mends what was broken. We all want to be restored, to feel whole again, to have the wounds of the past sealed and the pain forgotten. But healing is not something that happens in the crowd. It happens in the quiet corners of solitude, where truth has room to speak when you are constantly surrounded by noise, opinions, expectations, endless distractions. You can't hear the voice that matters most. And so, sometimes, God takes you out of the noise and places you in a season where it's just you and your soul, because that's where the healing begins. In that stillness, you are forced to face what you've been avoiding. The grief you never grieved. The emotions you kept burying under busyness. The heartbreak you pretended didn't hurt anymore. Healing asks for honesty, and honesty often feels like breaking before becoming. You sit with yourself and realize that the pain you thought you escaped is still sitting quietly in your chest, waiting for acknowledgement. You realize that healing isn't about forgetting what happened, it's about learning to see it differently. You begin to understand that every scar holds a story, not of shame, but of survival, but you can't hear that story until you slow down enough to listen. That's why isolation is necessary. It strips away the illusions that comforted you. It removes the noise that numbed you. It forces you to stop pretending you're okay and instead start becoming okay. Healing cannot grow where pretending lives. So he takes you away, not to punish you, but to protect you from environments that keep reopening your wounds. Because healing is not just about your heart, it's also about your habits. You can't heal in the same place that broke you. You can't recover while still seeking approval from the people who caused your pain. Sometimes the medicine looks like distance, sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like walking away from people who don't understand your process because they're not meant to. Healing is between you and God. No one else can walk that path for you. And yes, it's lonely. Not because you are unloved, but because growth is an inside job. Isolation gives you the space to shed what no longer fits. The identities you built out of survival, the stories you told yourself to justify staying small. In solitude, your soul learns to breathe again. You rediscover parts of yourself you lost trying to please others. You start to see your worth not as something earned, but something inherent. You start talking to God not as a last resort, but as your constant companion. And slowly you notice the shift. The ache softens, the bitterness fades, and peace starts to take root. You stop chasing closure from others, because you find closure in understanding. You stop trying to fix everything outside of you and start tending to what's inside of you. Healing doesn't make you who you used to be. It transforms you into who you were meant to be all along. But before that transformation can happen, isolation must come. It's the cocoon before the butterfly, the winter before the bloom. The world may not see the process, but heaven celebrates it. Because the most powerful version of you is the one that rose from solitude, the one who met their pain with faith and chose to rise anyway. So if you find yourself in a season where everything feels silent, where everyone seems distant, where it's just you trying to piece yourself back together, know that this is holy ground. Healing is happening here. God is working in the unseen, rearranging the broken pieces into something beautiful. You may not feel it yet, but one day you'll look back and realize that your isolation was not emptiness, it was incubation. It was the moment your soul was being restored, one quiet breath at a time. Some people are not gone. They were removed for your protection. You see, sometimes the greatest mercy God shows us is not in what he gives, but in what he takes away. There are people you thought you couldn't live without, people whose absence felt like a hole in your chest, people who walked away and left you questioning your worth. But what if their departure was not rejection? What if it was protection? What if God saw what you couldn't see? You prayed for peace, and he removed those who disturbed it. You prayed for growth, and he took away those who kept you small. You prayed for love, and he exposed those who only pretended to care. Every exit has purpose, even if it feels painful, because some people are assignments, not destinations. They come into your life to teach you something, to awaken something, to challenge something, but they were never meant to stay. And when their purpose in your story is complete, holding on to them becomes the very thing that holds you back. But our hearts, they don't like letting go. We confuse attachment with loyalty. We think love means staying even when it hurts. We chase what's familiar because it feels safe, even when it's slowly breaking us. And so sometimes God intervenes. He closes doors we refuse to close. He allows endings we never planned because he knows what keeping them would cost us. You may think you lost something valuable, but what you really lost was the weight that was keeping you from flying. Protection doesn't always look gentle. Sometimes it looks like heartbreak. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like unanswered prayers. But in time, you begin to see that every person who left made space for something better. You begin to see that God doesn't subtract without intention. He clears space to multiply blessings. The ones who left weren't meant to understand your next chapter because they were written only into your previous one. Their exit doesn't mean failure, it means transition. You cannot walk into your destiny carrying everyone from your history. Some people were meant to be lessons, not lifelong companions. And yes, it hurts. You replay conversations in your head. You wonder what you did wrong. You question your worth. But the truth is, some goodbyes are answered prayers in disguise. You may not see it while you're crying over what's gone, but eventually you'll see how that ending saved you. Maybe they were keeping you from peace. Maybe their influence was clouding your judgment. Maybe their presence made you settle for less than what you deserve. God saw it all, and while you were begging him to fix what was breaking, he was already protecting you from what you couldn't see. Intentions, betrayals, delays. Sometimes protection looks like rejection because our vision is limited, but his isn't. That's why you must trust the exits as much as the entries. The people who truly belong in your life won't need to be forced to stay. They will meet you with peace, not confusion, with effort, not excuses. Let those who left leave with your blessing, not your bitterness. They served their part. They taught you something about love, about trust, about boundaries, about yourself. They were chapters, not the whole book. You are not being punished. You are being refined. Every person who exits your life makes space for alignment, for relationships that don't demand you to shrink, for love that doesn't require you to lose yourself, for peace that doesn't come with conditions. The pain of their absence is temporary. The protection it brought is eternal. One day you'll thank God for every door that closed, for every friendship that faded, for every relationship that ended. Because without those endings, you wouldn't have discovered your beginning. So stop mourning what was never meant to last. Trust the removal. Not everyone deserves front row access to your life. Some were meant to wave from afar. Some were meant to teach you discernment, to show you the difference between connection and attachment. Their leaving wasn't your loss, it was your liberation. When God removes, it's not rejection, it's redirection. You're being guided toward people who will understand your growth, not resent it, who will protect your peace, not disturb it, who will love you from truth, not convenience. So breathe, let them go, because every departure that feels painful today is building a life that will feel peaceful tomorrow. Solitude refines your discernment about who deserves your energy. You see, when life pulls you into a season of quiet, when the calls stop coming, when the crowd disappears, when you're left sitting with only your thoughts and your faith, that's when you start to see clearly. The noise of the world often blinds you to who people really are, and sometimes to who you've become trying to keep them. But when solitude comes, it strips away performance. It shows you what's real. It reveals who genuinely cared and who was just comfortable in your company. You begin to see patterns. The one-sided effort, the constant giving without receiving, the way your energy was being drained while you convinced yourself it was love. Solitude sharpens your inner vision. It teaches you to recognize the difference between connection and convenience, between people who come to pour into your life and those who only come to take. And it's not that you suddenly become bitter. No, solitude makes you wiser. It makes you value peace over presence, truth over appearances, because when you've been alone long enough to know your worth, you stop allowing anyone to disturb your calm. You stop settling for relationships that feel heavy, conversations that go nowhere, and people who love only the parts of you that serve them. Solitude becomes the refining fire where discernment is forged. It makes you notice who checks on you when you're silent, not just when you're shining. It makes you recognize who listens with intention and who listens out of curiosity. When you've spent time in quiet healing, you no longer chase validation. You observe patterns. You start noticing who claps for you without envy, who supports you without conditions, who prays for you without asking. And when you begin to discern that deeply, it changes everything about how you love, how you give, and how you trust. Solitude trains your spirit to feel energy before words are even spoken. You begin to sense peace or warning in someone's presence. You start to feel when something isn't pure, even if it looks appealing. And that's not paranoia, that's spiritual maturity. Because solitude isn't just about being away from people, it's about getting close enough to yourself to hear what your intuition has been trying to tell you all along. You begin to remember that your time is sacred, that not everyone deserves access to your energy. You start realizing that it's okay to love from a distance, to forgive and still set boundaries, to be kind without being consumed. Solitude teaches you that giving your energy is a choice, not an obligation. You start to understand that your peace is your responsibility. And not everyone is capable of handling it with care. So you become selective, not because you think you're better than anyone, but because you finally understand the cost of being available to the wrong ones. You learn to stop explaining your worth to people who only see your value when it benefits them. You start guarding your time like it's treasure because you've learned that the world glorifies busyness, but solitude teaches discernment. The ability to know what deserves your yes and what needs your silence. And this kind of wisdom cannot be rushed. It's born in stillness. It's born in the quiet hours where you face yourself honestly and realize that not everyone clapping is cheering for you and not everyone smiling has good intentions. Solitude gives you eyes to see beyond words, beyond charm, beyond appearances. You learn that discernment is love's greatest ally. It protects your heart from being used. It keeps your soul from being drained. It helps you invest your energy in what truly grows you. So when people say you've changed, maybe you haven't changed, maybe you've simply learned to value peace over popularity, learn to walk away from manipulation disguised as affection, learn to say no without guilt. Solitude does that. It refines your spiritual sight until you no longer chase what glitters, you wait for what's genuine. And once you've known the serenity that comes from being at peace with yourself, you stop entertaining chaos just to feel company. You realize that energy is currency, and not everyone can afford the cost of your presence. Solitude doesn't make you cold. It makes you clear. It turns your heart from desperate to discerning, from restless to rooted, from dependent to divine. You start recognizing that the right people won't drain you. They'll add peace, they'll bring alignment, they'll mirror growth, but you only see that once you've spent enough time alone to learn the rhythm of your own peace. Solitude is the classroom where discernment is taught. It's the sacred pause that turns your kindness into strength, your empathy into wisdom, and your love into something intentional. When you come out of that season, you no longer beg for attention. You attract authenticity. You no longer fear being alone. You fear being surrounded by the wrong ones. And that right there is the gift of solitude. It refines your energy until only peace remains. Being alone is where you meet your authentic self. There's something sacred about the silence. Something pure about those quiet moments when no one is watching, no one is applauding, and no one is asking anything from you. It is in that space, stripped of performance and expectation, that you finally see yourself, not as the world defines you, but as you truly are. So many of us spend years wearing masks, trying to fit into molds that were never meant for us, adjusting our tone, our dreams, our faith, just to be accepted. We become experts at pretending we're happy, pretending we're confident, pretending we're whole. But when life removes the crowd and leaves you standing alone, you're faced with the version of yourself you can't perform for. It's uncomfortable at first. You start to see the places where you've compromised too much, the relationships you've stayed in out of fear, the dreams you've buried because you were scared to stand out. But it's in this discomfort that transformation begins. Solitude has a way of introducing you to your truth, the one you silence to make others comfortable. Alone, you start hearing the voice of your soul again. You start remembering who you were before life taught you to shrink, before the world convinced you that your softness was weakness, before the disappointments hardened your heart. You start realizing that you are not the roles you play. You are not just someone's friend, partner, child, or title. You are a soul with purpose, a being created with intention. Being alone gives you the space to meet that part of yourself, the real you, not the edited version. You begin to see what you actually love, what truly matters, what drains you, what nourishes you. And for the first time, you begin to make choices that align with your peace, not with people's approval. That's what authenticity feels like. Living in a way that doesn't betray your own spirit, but meeting your authentic self takes courage because you will have to confront the illusions you once depended on. You'll realize that some of the people you called friends were really just mirrors reflecting who you thought you had to be. You'll recognize that you were following paths that never belonged to you, chasing dreams that were never yours. But once you meet yourself, truly meet yourself, you can never go back to pretending. You'll crave truth even when it's hard. You'll crave peace even when it means being misunderstood. You'll crave authenticity even when it costs connection. Because you'll realize that the real you is worth protecting. And the beauty of solitude is that it teaches you to love your own company. You stop feeling lonely in your own presence because you've learned how to be whole without needing someone else to complete you. You begin to nurture your soul. Speak kindly to yourself. Forgive yourself for all the times you abandoned your truth just to feel accepted. You learn that being alone doesn't mean being unloved. It means you finally made space for the right kind of love. The one that starts within. In solitude, you learn to listen differently. You begin to distinguish between the noise of fear and the whisper of intuition. You start realizing that your worth was never in how much you're wanted, but in how deeply you are rooted in truth. The authentic self doesn't beg to belong. It radiates belonging. It doesn't chase attention. It attracts alignment. And once you live from that space, the world around you changes. You stop seeking validation in temporary people and start finding fulfillment in timeless connection with God, with peace, with purpose. You become more grounded, more discerning, more gentle with yourself. You start to understand that being alone was never about isolation. It was about revelation. Because when you strip away everything false, what remains is your essence, and that essence is divine. The world may not always understand your authenticity. They might call you distant or different, but that's okay. You weren't created to be understood by everyone. You were created to be authentic in a world addicted to imitation. And authenticity has a cost. It requires solitude. Because you cannot find yourself in a crowd that tells you who to be. You find yourself in the quiet where your spirit is finally free to speak. So, if you find yourself alone right now, don't rush to fill the silence. Sit with it. Listen. There's a version of you waiting to be rediscovered. The one who isn't afraid to dream again, to love again, to live truthfully again. The one who knows that peace is better than attention and that purpose is better than popularity. Alone is where you meet that version. Your purest, most powerful, most peaceful self. And once you meet that self, you'll never trade her for anything less than truth again. God separates before he elevates. Trust the quiet season. Every time you feel like life is pulling you away from everything familiar, every time doors close that you thought were meant to stay open, every time people drift away without explanation, pause before you panic, because more often than not, separation is not a sign that you've lost favor. It's a sign that you're being positioned for greater purpose. You see, divine elevation never happens in comfort. Before every rise, there is a removal. Before every new level, there is a letting go. God cannot build something new on foundations still tied to the old. So he separates you from people, from habits, from environments, even from versions of yourself that can't survive where he's taking you. And though it feels like loss, it's really preparation. He takes you through the wilderness, not to punish you, but to strengthen you. The wilderness is where dependence is learned, where your faith is no longer theory, but breath. It's where you discover that his presence is enough. Even when no one else understands your path, it's in this separation that you begin to see that elevation is not about applause, it's about alignment. He removes distractions so you can finally focus on what he whispered to your spirit long ago. You start to realize that some of the prayers you thought were unanswered were actually being rearranged. You were asking for growth, and he was removing what stunted it. You were praying for peace, and he was cutting ties that kept you in turmoil. You were asking for clarity, and he was silencing voices that confused your direction. Every separation has purpose, even when it feels painful. Because God doesn't just elevate your circumstances, he elevates your character. And character cannot be built in the crowd. It's formed in the quiet. It's in those nights when you cry alone but still choose to believe. It's in the moments when you're tempted to go back but decide to stand firm. It's in the days when nothing makes sense, but you choose to trust anyway. That's where strength is born. Not in success, but in surrender. And when he finally brings you out of that season, you'll realize why the separation was necessary. The people who left couldn't go where you're going. The comfort you lost was keeping you small. The environment you outgrew was too fragile for the weight of your calling. God was not ignoring you. He was isolating you to protect what he's birthing in you, because not everyone deserves access to a destiny in progress. Some would have distracted you, others would have delayed you, and a few might have destroyed what was still being formed. That's why he hides you in seasons of quiet, not to forget you, but to fortify you. You are being shaped in the silence for what will soon be seen in the light. And yes, it's uncomfortable. Separation always is. You'll wonder why you're left out, why you're misunderstood, why things aren't moving like they used to. But that's how elevation begins, slowly, silently, in the soil of surrender. You cannot soar while still holding onto the ground that once felt safe. He's teaching you to release, to trust, to grow wings before the wind changes. Every person who's ever been elevated went through a private breaking before the public blessing. There is no shortcut to transformation. It always requires separation. Think about it. Even the seed must go underground before it blooms. It's hidden, unseen, isolated, yet inside, everything is shifting, expanding, preparing. That's what God is doing with you. He's taking you deeper before he takes you higher. So don't fight the quiet season. Don't despise the stillness. Don't mistake isolation for abandonment. You're being developed in divine secrecy, because what's coming next needs a version of you that's purified, strengthened, and ready. He's teaching you how to stand alone so that when you stand elevated, you won't fall apart. You'll carry peace where others carry pressure, faith where others carry fear, wisdom where others chase validation. And one day, when the season changes and you begin to rise, you'll look back and realize that every tear had purpose, every goodbye had grace, and every delay was divine, because God never separates without the intention to elevate. What he's preparing for you requires maturity, and that maturity is built in the moments no one sees. So trust the process, the silence, the distance, the pruning. It's not the end of your story, it's the preparation for the chapter where everything makes sense. You are not being left behind, you are being lifted up quietly, purposefully, faithfully. Trust the separation because your elevation depends on it.